run dangerously hot.
Yeah, I mean, through a high-speed section, if you're on wets on a dry section, you can literally see big bits of rubber coming off, hitting you in the visor, hitting you in the helmet.
Ooh, Perez stayed to the right long enough. He slipped up the inside of Gonzalez. Gonzalez counter-attacking, but again Perez has judged that right. Gareth, he's got the inside line for the second element. Didn't have enough grip.
Rudely chopped off there. He's more like the Perez we're used to seeing in the last few races.
Yeah.
Qualifying, he just obviously had a problem and qualified well down yesterday, and hence had a poor race yesterday. Got caught up in the midfield nonsense that goes on. But today he's really on it.
Yes, he is. Still 2 places away from a point. Kamui Kobayashi with the final point at the moment. And Al-Fardan, again, I'm quite impressed. He's staying ahead of Kobayashi here. And similarly behind, Perez looks like he's got all the speed and aggression. And again, this time he uses a corner where there is no counter-attack. And you see again, the Campos car really with plenty of grip there. So despite the changeable conditions, they seem to have hit upon a pretty decent setup. And we're looking at Petrov earlier on, and he had a lot of grip in the wet, or could find a lot of grip in the wet, and here Perez has still got enough to be able to put in a good aggressive move.
Massively quicker through there, isn't he? Massively quicker. His next target now is Kobayashi, championship leader.
Yes.
Final points position, 6th. That's a big mistake from Maldonado, isn't that? Or was it Yamamoto?
It is, no, that's Maldonado. Yeah. This is the battle for second.
Isn't it? Yeah.
But again, Valzecchi with not enough traction to be able to do much about it. I mean, if he'd been going into the corner and through the corner at the same speed, he should almost have run into him, and he didn't. So maybe Valzecchi's tyres have just been worked a little harder. And Gareth, somebody once described it as it's like you're driving on jelly instead of rubber, because you turn the wheel and the thing just sort of slushes around
it's
underneath you.
Yeah, it's a weird feeling, actually, yeah. Yes, it is very much like that. The car responds, but just when it feels like rather than when you tell it to. Sort of
like flat tyres.
Yeah.
Diego Nunes, fastest lap of the race. So the PK car's set up, finally coming towards him. And I suppose with relatively restricted experience of this track, and particularly in changeable weather conditions, was it wet last year? I don't recall it being so. There's been a bit of a sort of suck it and see setup change, I would have thought. I mean, you've had a long time to do it, but that doesn't give you any information of how the track's going to respond.
That's right. I mean, the teams will have a good base wet setup as a sort of just a generic, if it rains, put this
cold
on.
European
However,
wet.
Yeah, exactly. That's not track specific, and so getting it exactly right is for everybody a finger in the air, and some will get it exactly right and some will get it just a bit wrong, and that's enough to be very wrong when the cars are so close.
And you've got to gamble as well, haven't you? You've got to gamble that it's going to dry and not rain again, or you've got to gamble that it's definitely going to rain again and not be drier, and so even if your setup would be spot on for fully wet conditions, when it's like this, you're still out of the ballpark.
I'm sure some teams would have looked at the rain beforehand and thought, well, this is so wet, there's no way it can dry in time, so we'll go for a full-on wet setup. Others would have had more nous and thought, actually, you know, it's very, very warm and very humid here, it's going to be dry-ish within 6-7 laps. Let's go with a kind of intermediate setup.
Yeah, it might depend who you know in the Formula 1 paddock, whose weather radar you can get a quick look at and say, what does it say for the next half hour?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the way Perez is going, I would say he's gone for an intermediate setup, because as the track's got drier and drier, he's absolutely flying.
Yeah, Nunes too. He might end up on the podium, yesterday's race winner, and that would be quite entertaining. 3.5 minutes, so what, 2 laps probably? So we're not going to get full race distance. There is Davide Valzecchi. 8th yesterday, started on pole here. And it's turning in, but it doesn't really look like he's got an awful lot of rear grip there to deal with. And Al-Fardan with Kobayashi. So again, look, is Kobayashi looking for a different line, or does it just not turn? Al-Fardan seemed to have a much tighter turn in there. Still the leader running away out front. Well, not running away, but keeping the margin. Well, this would be good to give you an idea of just how much the driver is working to keep the thing on the island. Fastest man on the track is Alvaro Parent. Still not got bad grip there, has he?
No, you can see what he did there was turn in and take a great big chunk of curb. What that does really is just help the car to turn in. Ordinarily in the dry, he probably wouldn't do that because it would unsettle the car too much. The car's unsettled anyway because it's running on rubber that's really not up to the job. So what he does there, he hooks the front right tyre over that curb. It helps turn the car around and it helps get around the corner quicker.
Bit of ditch hooking.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah. Alfar down here, 5th place, first of these 3. Then Kobayashi holding on to the final point. And how close is Perez going to get? It's not going to make it. You see, I was just going to say something really foolish. It's not going to make a difference to Kobayashi's championship, but of course you can't say that because championships do get won by single points. It's unlikely, but you really don't want that, do you? You know?
I mean, all it takes is for Valsecchi to get pole and win the race and Kobayashi not score next time out in Bahrain. Suddenly there's massive pressure on Kobayashi. He would go into the last race of the season, the sprint race on that Sunday morning, only what, 3 points ahead or something like that. And
especially even if he's on, even if he's on the front row of the grid, if there's the first corner shunt in Bahrain and he's out, then he starts way at the back. And if Kobayashi, as you say, if Valsecchi, ends up on the top of the pile, then suddenly a point here or there becomes life or death.
This is interesting, actually, isn't it? Kobayashi really needs to think about getting past Alfar down pretty sharpish because Perez.
Problem is, he has been thinking about it for several laps and he's still nowhere near close enough.
We've seen this a couple of times this year where Kobayashi doesn't seem to have it about him to put the move on somebody. We saw it yesterday, he was stuck in behind Petrov. Others came along, I mean, he gave up, he pitted early and got tyres early. Others came along further down the line in the race and dispatched Petrov pretty quickly. And we've seen at other races this year, Kobayashi doesn't seem to have the necessary racecraft to put moves on people when it's needed.
Which is not great news.
No.
Petrov does. I mean, he like. In fact, both the Campos drivers, he and Perez, are very aggressive overtakers when they have the need to. But he's doing a pretty good job here. And in this temperature, Gareth, with a high temperature, high humidity, cockpit temperature, is really very high. Even on the last lap, he's really just got to concentrate on every corner, just get the thing round and not do anything stupid and toss it into the weeds.
No, you have to. I mean, the same thing happened yesterday with Nunes. He was so far ahead. He was 9 seconds ahead, and it looked very easy. But really, you have to stay focused. It's very easy to just let your mind slip, wander elsewhere. Next thing you know, you're in the hedge. Yeah, when somebody's coming at you on both sides in every corner, the adrenaline level is high, the concentration is really sharp. When you're nearly cruising, then it all goes away. But no such dramas. Time has run out, and Vitaly Petrov has still not been challenged. Victory for the Russian driver, and again for Campos. Second place for Pastor Maldonado, and Davide Valsecchi completes the podium. So all 3 race leaders end up on the podium. Started off with Valsecchi in front. Maldonado had his turn, and Kobayashi and Perez, the final corner. How's it going to end at the line? Perez, surely Perez, not by much. That was a real photo finish, sort of taken as read that he wasn't going to be close enough, and maybe Kobayashi had as well, but Perez had not given that one up, and I'm not entirely sure